Hey everyone, welcome back, and in today's tutorial I'll be showing you how to make 3 of my favourite transitions as seen from my edits of the past. So without further ado, let's get into it. First up we have the rectangle slide quartet transition. Alrighty, so this is my composition at the moment. I am in a 1920 by 1080 composition, frame rate is at 30, it's just 5 seconds long, but obviously this will be however long you want your transition to be with your audio. I don't have an audio, so I'm just doing it as I like. But yeah, you want to set your clips something out like this. So on this side I have 4 clips that I'll be using for the 4 different rectangles on the screen, so we can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have the same on the other side, and I also have a background clip here that I'll be using in the background because these clips, like the rectangles, will be scaled down a bit because otherwise we're going to have a black background and that's not really what I'm going for, so we have this instead of Jelena and Kate. And we have the Jelena on this side, 4 clips again, 1, 2, 3 and 4. And I recommend when you're doing this transition to have your clips sort of in the center as much as possible. I know that's kind of difficult, like for this one the clip only went this far, so I just pulled it in as much as I could because it just makes masking so much easier later on. And also I've color coded each of these layers to the other clip that they'll be corresponding to. So this bottom green clip will correspond to this clip here, and this yellow one to this one, and so on. Okay, so firstly I'm going to hide this background layer because we'll get to this one later, and I just don't really feel like dealing with it right now. And we're going to start with this green layer, so we can go over here to this little circle and we can isolate this green layer, and we can also go to this other green layer and isolate them so that we don't see all of the other layers, it's just these two working together. Now, so make sure you have your motion blur turned on and that motion blur is selected on all of these clips here. If it isn't, just click this little box and it will be. And then we're going to do a position slide, so get your motion tile, all of that stuff ready. I do like 300 and 300 and mirror edges, those are my basic settings, and I'll just copy that over to this clip. And actually while we're at it, we'll just paste it to the rest of them as well, why not? Just Command V all of that, or I don't know if it's different if you're on a PC, but for Mac, copy paste, Command C, Command V. And now let's get to the position slide. So we're just going to do a normal position Y slide here, so we'll just like separate dimensions as I just did there. And then we can start our keyframe here. We can always change this later, but and then let's say this one can go down. So I'll just pull it till I get to that black bit there, so it's basically the clip is flipped around. And then I'll select my keyframes, easy ease, graph editor, and we can do a transition like so, super easy. And then we'll do the exact same thing on the other side. And like the beginning part of this this transition is mostly just slides. It's gonna be a lot of slides. The thing I like to do with my slides is I bring this first keyframe forward by 1, because you see sometimes you get like this weird sort of flashed image before it goes like blurry, and if you bring this keyframe back by 1 it gets rid of that. But sometimes you may need to adjust your graph. If you were doing your graph with the keyframe where the clip started, it might be a little bit different. I'm on the value graph, by the way, in case some of you are on the speed graph. Yeah, I might actually drag these keyframes out to the edge just so we can keep it flowing nicely. And if you do that, just make sure these aren't this isn't going like all the way back here, because that's not what we're going for at the moment. So yeah, just make sure all of your graphs are good before we go. We've got the first layer down, and I'm basically just going to copy this Y position, so you can just select here, copy, and I'm going to alternate the clips because 2 of the rectangles are going to go sliding down and the other 2 are going to be sliding up. So I can just copy and paste this one here. So just Command C, Command V, and it's like that. And now we have this clip here, should also be going down. Lovely. And I will do the same for this side, but with copying this position. So we can go to Y position, copy, go to where this frame is here, and then Command V. If you press P, you'll see the keyframes are there, and it should be moving like so. And now I'm going to do the slide on the opposite, so I'm just going to close all of these by pressing P. yeah, we have our positions all done. And now we're gonna get to the fun part, which is masking all of these. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to pre-compose each of these corresponding layers together so that when I mask them, they can just sort of be grouped together. So I'm just gonna move the layers like so that each color is sort of closer together. And you can see which one belongs with which. And now we're going to pre-compose all of these layers together, and I'm going to go back to the same colour that I did before so we don't forget which one's which. Alright, so now your clip should look something like this. I recommend having a marker where you want like the split to be. And now we're going to get to the masking. What we want to do is we're going to turn on the proportional grid here. And you should be able to see all of these lines. And I'm going to go to the rectangle tool. I'm just going to go along the proportional grid like these two middle lines and just make a nice little rectangle. Doesn't matter if your person's like character's face doesn't fit in it entirely, like totally cool. Not a problem. So now it should look like this, and they are slightly unaligned. So, I mean, you can either move the mask along a bit, and if they both fit, that's great. If it doesn't, I might want to move like, let's turn this grid off for a second. I might want to move like Kate's face a little bit to the right, so I'm going to double click, go into this composition, and I'm just going to change her X position to go slightly across. Don't like just drag it, otherwise you'll add an extra keyframe here and then your slide won't look normal like we want it to. So now her face is sort of closer to the middle, and we go straight to the eyeliner, which is great. And we're going to use the proportional grid again, and we're going to position these guys over to this sort of area over here. So we're going to move our anchor point to the middle of this little rectangle. So if you want to move the anchor point, just hit Y on your keyboard, hold the little circle, and then just hold shift so it'll go to the middle like that. And it'll just make it easier to direct where you want this to go. So we want it to go like around here, and then we're going to scale this down to maybe 80. Obviously the background won't be the same, but it'll be like that. And we're going to do the exact same thing for all of the different layers, but just sort of move them along. So I'll probably speed this up as I'm just doing the exact same thing over and over again. So yeah, you can actually just like copy the mask. If you press M and just hold copy, like Command C, and just paste it onto all of your other clips, then you'll have all of the mask done. So I'll see you in a minute when I'm done speeding all of this up. Alright, so I've got all of that finished. They are lined up like this, and if you turn off the proportional grid, they should be fairly evenly spaced like so. And what you should have now is 4 different splits going which other way. And if we uncheck the background layer, you'll see it's there in the background, just kind of chilling. But we're not going to look at that. So just make sure motion blur is checked for all of these, just here. And then for each of these layers, we are going to keyframe the position to come in. So we're going to separate dimensions, and this time we're going to use a X position. So because they're going to slide in from this way and just go outwards from left to right. So we're going to drag this keyframe towards the end, because this is the end result of where we want our clip to be once the keyframes are done that with their thing. So we're just going to drag this all the way out here, and we're going to do the same thing for each of these. Alright, so they're all hanging over here, and they're going to go whoosh like this. Yep, so you can get all of these, keyframe them. I might actually just drag this one out a bit more over here, so like this is past the point. I don't know, it might keep the flow going better. If you select all of like the end bits here, and then you go to the graph editor, you'll see all of them here, and we can hold shift and just drag all of those like that together. But then I'm going to move the other handle individually. Ta-da! I might actually slow it down a little bit. So I don't know, it's like super fast, so I'm actually going to slow mine down. I'm going to pull these down a little bit and see what that looks like. Just to roughly the same sort of distance as each other. Doesn't have to be perfect, I mean it's only going to be there for like 0.1 second, no one's going to know. There we go. A little bit more relaxed, which is nice. So now I'm going to focus on the background a little bit. So we'll turn this on and nothing much is happening here. We could do a slide of the background the other way maybe. So if we do a motion tile on the background, again like same as before, 300 by 300 is fine. Mirror edges. Actually maybe not. Sorry, I'm really spontaneous when I edit, like whatever I want, it's just out of the blue. We're going to do a slide, like an X position slide, but going the opposite way. Maybe that'll look cool. I don't know. So we're going to do separate dimensions, X position, and I'm going to drag that to the end. And this time we are going to drag it this way, moving her along. I kind of want to do maybe a bit more, so we might change the output width. Just drag that out. 400. Should be alright. There we go. And then we're gonna we're gonna graph these ones on easy ease. And then again, to avoid this like little frozen frame thing that we have going on, I will drag this keyframe outwards. If you do need to change it later and you like can't grab it, that's fine, don't worry. Just like select this bit and then drag this keyframe and it will drag the whole thing together. And then you can just bring it forward, edit it, and then put it back. I mean, I probably would do something a bit more interesting with the background, but I'm lazy and this is a tutorial, so we're not going to. I might add a halftone. So we're gonna dots frequency, might bring up the lightness a little bit, and we'll change, well maybe a purple because Kate's color is purple. And we'll bring it up like so. You can do whatever you want to the background really. I'm just gonna do something like this. So I'll add like a little wiggle. I have a setting here that I can't remember how to make again, so I'm just gonna put this here. But if you do use like a normal wiggle setting, I use position and a rotation. You can copy my settings here. I'm pretty sure the only thing I change is these things here. So like the wiggle speed 0.7 and wiggle amount 15. That's what I have. And so it'll, like, I put it on this end one, so it just sort of shakes around a little bit. It's not too dramatic, but it adds a little something. And I'll just add, you know, just copy the same preset over and over. But I like to change where I put it because I think that might add a little bit of variation in like the rotation, so they're all not rotating in the same way, which I think you get if you paste it in like the exact same position that you have your time indicator in. So yeah, they look a little bit more natural now. I don't know if you can really tell. It's a bit dark. I might need to raise the brightness in some of these, but it's okay. I'm gonna do something a little bit to the background because it's a bit boring. We're gonna use a scale and we're gonna scale it up a little bit, add a little bit of impact. I don't know. Something just needs to happen at the back here. So we're gonna add like a little pump in scale. I have the end one going up to 123, as you can see in the corner. And we're gonna do a little pump. Actually, no, I don't like that. Okay, we're gonna do it a different way. So we're gonna do it like this, where the steep bit is where the marker is, so that's where most of the movement is going to happen in the shortest amount of time. So it'll look something like this. I mean, I don't love the background, but we're just gonna leave it. Okay, now that we've got our desired effect for these ones here, we might add a little bit of variation. Pre-compose all of these together, just like that. We can change the color so that you can see the two separate, and we are going to duplicate it, and we're going to add the effect edge detect, which is not spelled like that. There we go. If we scale this one up, it will look kind of weird, so just bear with me. So it's going to look like this if you isolate the layer. You can add like these settings however you want. I'm gonna up like blue and red because I'm going for like a purple kind of look. Then we're gonna make the mode of this layer onto screen, unisolate it, and it will look something like this. So you have something cool behind them. And we're gonna add a drop shadow to the top layer. So we go to drop shadow, put one on, and then put the distance to 0 and just feather softness however you want. It'll look like so. Oh, and also we can add something a little bit more to these layers by adding in a little flash that can occur here. So I'm going to go to glow. I'm going to use the sapphire glow, but you can do this the same with like brightness and contrast. That's the wrong layer. Add a sapphire glow here, and then we're going to keyframe it. I'm going to do like brightness 1, and then over here 0. And then the frame before, make sure it's 0 so you don't have it like glowing the whole time. Put a 0 here, and we're going to keyframe this. Make it easy ease. So they just have a little glow. So yeah, that's basically your transition done. And this is what I might have made mine look like if I added a colouring and 2 of my overlays. So this might give you some ideas of how to use this if you want to. But yeah, other than that, we are all done. Next up, I'll be showing you how to make a triple slide into a 3D rectangle transition. Okay, so for this transition, you want to have your clips set up something like this. You're going to have 3 on this side and then 1 for when you do your 3D rectangle that's going to rotate into this one. So I have 3 layers here, 1, 2, and 3. So as always, make sure you have motion blur turned on, so turn it on here and then select all of your clips to make sure it has it on. Actually, maybe you don't really need it on the first one for the moment, so we'll just leave that as is. And so we're going to be starting with the bottom layer. So this will be my layer that's going to be like behind everything. It's going to be the layer that starts us off, and then we're going to go to the second middle layer, which will be this one. And now I'm going to scroll out so I can see my whole thing. On the second clip, I'm going to use the pen tool to make a diagonal line sort of mask around it like this. Doesn't have to be perfect straight away, you can always change these. And then it'll be something like this is fine. And then like for reference, we'll have this one. This one will like slide over this way. This one will be in the middle, and then we'll have the other one slide in as well. If you hold the line, you can drag it out. So I might do it like this. And then I can go to M on the keyboard, select this one, copy, and then I can paste it onto the top layer as well, because I want a similar sort of look. But then if I double click on the mask, I can just drag it out a little bit so it'll actually cover Kate's face. Press enter, get rid of it, and then if you want to drag this one out, just hold the line and hold shift and drag it outwards, and you'll have it something like this. So if we're using these 2 markers as our little guide here for when these 2 are going to be sliding inwards, so I'm going to hide the top layer now that I've masked them both, and I'm going to hold P for position, I'm going to separate dimensions, and I'm going to go to X position, slide this one over here because that's the end result. This is the end result, how I want it to be, and I'm going to hold shift and just drag this to the right, like so. And then I'm going to ease them, graph editor, something like this should be fine. And then I'm going to do a similar thing for this clip too. So we go to the top, and we're going to go to position, drag that to the end because that's where we want it to be, and then we'll drag it to the right, select them both, keyframe easy ease, and graph, do the same routine. And now it'll look oh my gosh, I actually did not do that right, okay. This one actually needs to be over here. And since I want this middle one to be a little bit more sort of prominent, I also want this mask to go back a bit. So I'm going to adjust that. So we're going to have this one go back a bit, and then we're going to change the position again, maybe like that. And then I'm going to drag this keyframe back, pull it a little bit. So long as you're sort of editing on the keyframes that you've already put down, like especially at the end, it shouldn't affect anything too much, except for this one. Hang on, see that my graph has gone a little bit wonky because I've been editing with it, so just make sure you check that before you do anything. But if I just fix it, it should be okay. I'm actually gonna drag this up because I want it to be slower. I mean, obviously, for you guys, you will have music beats to go with, but I don't, so I'm just making it up as I go along. I'm gonna fix this. I mean, that's what editing is, really. I mean, I think like I say this a lot, but it's just sort of changing things as you go along. I mean, I don't ever have like a set settings that I revert to. It's never just, oh yeah, this, that, doop, doop. It's always changing and I can't really control that. So yeah, we have this at the moment, but we also want to add maybe like some little line dividers. This probably would have been better to add before, but it's okay. I'll show you what to do if you haven't. And if you're like me and you decided you want lines afterwards and you don't really know how to connect them. So we can go add a new shape layer and then we'll trim it down to our liking. So Command Shift D on Mac, PC is something a little bit different but similar. I'm going to use the pen tool again and we're just going to go along the line that we did. So just like that. And you'll get like a little white line. Mine is on 4 pixels. That's fine, I only want like a little dainty line. And I'll drag it back here because that's where the clip actually begins. So turn on motion blur on this layer and then we're going to duplicate it and then I'm going to put this one down here because this is going to be the line that goes with this yellow clip. And I'm going to move this little shape layer to fit this one here. Since I copied the mask, they should be the same exact line, so that fits perfectly. And now what I'm gonna, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna attach each of these lines to the corresponding layer because at the moment they just kind of exist in the spot and they don't move along. So just go back to where you attach them so that they're matching up and then go to parent and then drag it onto the layer you want this line to stick to. And if you have motion blur turned on, it should just sort of move with it now. So you can see this middle one here is moving along while the one on the right isn't because I haven't attached it yet. So we're going to do the exact same thing for this one but go to the end because that's where I matched them up. So you want to like attach them where the lines actually match up because if you attach it over like say here and you parent it, then it's going to be moving like away from where you actually want it to be. So we don't want that. Command Z. So we're going to go to the end where I attached it and parent them like so, and now they will move together. I might add a little glow to these lines like this. So expand it out, copy, paste. Actually, I want this at 20. Copy and paste. Okay, so they're both at 20 radius, which is fine. And now we have to sort out the middle one here. So we're going to use position and we're going to separate dimensions. We're going to refer to these keyframes here. I'm just going to go to position, X position. We'll go to the end here and then we'll just move it so that it fits in this little slot like this. Easy ease. Keyframe, and we'll do something like this because it's moving from a certain point, so we don't want it too sharp. And then I think I might drag this back because this one's looking a little bit awkward. Oh my gosh, okay, why do I hate this? We're gonna slow these ones down a little, down a little bit. Maybe it'll look nicer. Yeah, that's better. Okay, and I do want this one to move now. Actually, if I drag these out. I'm sorry if this is so hard to follow, but I can't make up my mind. Something like this. This one should be there, like a little bit, I don't know. It should be there sooner, so. But yeah, so this is what we ended up with. Might not be perfect, but you can adjust those how you like. And now we're going to move on to the 3D rectangle. Okay, so now that we have that slide going on, we're going to move on to the 3D rectangle part. So what you want to do is we're going to pre-comp all of this together, even the second layer. So just select all of that, hold shift, pre-compose, and do that. And we have this divider here to tell us when we're going to be switching over. So now we can put motion blur and make sure this layer is also on 3D, and we're going to duplicate it 3 times, 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to go to custom view 1, and you can see your layers here. And then if you have After Effects CC 2017 and up, I think you'll have this option up here called snapping that you can turn on, which is really helpful for making 3D shapes and stuff. You have like CS6 or below, I don't know if those versions have the snapping tool, so you might just have to do it by hand manually. Okay, so to make our 3D shape, we're going to go to rotation, and then X rotation will be -90, and then hold V and then select around here and just sort of hold it. Oh no, I turned off snapping. Hold it like there, and then if you have the snapping turned on, it will like just sort of connect to the middle. And then on the second layer, rotation, we're going to go to -180, and then hold this middle bit here and then move it over so it should fit. And then on the third layer, we're going to do -270, and that will go just there. So now you have a 3D rectangle. And I'm gonna cheat, and I don't ever add the sides if you don't see them, because why go to the extra effort for something you're not gonna see? So if you're not gonna rotate your rectangle in such a way that you need to see the sides, then you don't need to add them, because what's the point? So I'm just gonna skip that bit, and instead I'm gonna add a null layer to the top of everything. So now we have this null object, I'm gonna trim it. And then we're going to make sure that the null object is also 3D and has motion blur turned on, and then we're going to go to the right view, and we're going to basically eyeball this little Z position so that it's in the middle. Like, don't do the middle of this black square, because like you see the outline here, it goes past, so you need to sort of figure out where the middle is on the purple outline, not the black square. So don't stop here. Like here would not be the middle, but further this way would be. You gotta kind of eyeball it. I haven't really figured out a proper way to do it, but like something like this should work fine in a 1920 by 1080 composition, which is what I'm using. So that should be alright. And then we can go back to active camera, and we're going to select all of these sides, and we're going to parent them to the null layer. So now if you go to rotation on the null, and you rotate X, Y, you should see it goes around like so. So now we're going to keyframe this 3D layer, and I want it to scale out and rotate a little bit, so we're going to do that. Firstly, we're going to do the scale, so we'll start something like over here, and then we'll put it far off over here, and let's say 70 maybe, should be alright. And we're going to select these, we're going to ease them, graph editor, and then we want the fastest point to be in the middle where we had our transition. So I'm going to drag these so that the steepest point is where my time indicator is. So like that. See, and it just sort of zooms out. It doesn't look like a proper transition yet because I haven't added the rotation, but we're going to do that now. And I might start the rotation a little bit further in because I do want to be able to see this last clip come in, but that might not be possible with what I'm doing. We'll see. So we have the rotation, and then once you've hit the rotation keyframe, you can press U to see your scale keyframes as well. We'll just do it back like this, and then we'll just roll it to, maybe we'll do -270. We'll see how that goes. And we'll highlight these two, and then put the steepest point in the middle again. Like I say, this is all just sort of temporary, just kind of blocking it all in. We can refine stuff later if it doesn't look nice. Okay. We are getting this weird issue where we're having like a little bit of a black line up here, so I might actually up the scale on the first keyframe on the null layer. So we might go to like 102, and that should hopefully help you out. I want like a lot more rotation actually, so I might have to go back even more. If I do one spin and then -80, oh -90, sorry. Let's see. I need it to be like a little bit tighter so that like it sort of blurs more and you can't really tell the difference between the clips as much, and the transition isn't so sudden. And I feel like my scale needs a little bit of work maybe. Actually, no, I do want to spread these out. So we're gonna do it like this. So So like my rule of thumb is if it doesn't look like it's flowing or it doesn't look smooth, just spread the keyframes out. That usually seems to work. But it can mean that some parts in the later sections of your clip may not be visible, which is what I'm worried about this one. And then always, of course, make sure to check each of your graphs to make sure they're not offset. So now I want to see what it looks like. That's looking right. My computer fan's going up, sorry if you can hear that. But alright, we have the basic rectangle now. And then we can also, so if you're happy with that, that's fine, you can just pre-comp this and you're all good to go. But we can add something a little bit extra, and a thing I always like to do is I duplicate my 3D shapes a couple times and I'll scale them up by 120 and then the bottom one by, oh maybe that's too much, maybe 110 and then 120. And then you can decrease the opacity, so we'll do maybe 50 on the second layer and then T for opacity and then 25 on the bottom one. And it sort of gives it this little like glass box thing. And then we can add a drop shadow, make the distance 0 and soften how much you prefer. And then copy it and paste it onto the other two. And I also probably should have a background clip, but I don't. Oh, and then if you like, you can also add a flash onto the second layer, which is easier to do here because just a bit less complicated really. So you can add a little glow flash keyframe 1 to 0, like so. Easy ease. You can see how that looks. That's basically all you need, really. And then I just added a little background in here. It's the same one that I used for the previous transition, so it's just, but I flipped it over. So yeah, this is what it might look like with the background. And here's what it might look like if you added some overlays and a coloring. So if you want some ideas of how you might want to make this look in an edit, here you go. And yeah, that's it. And lastly, we have this inside 3D cube transition. So for this transition, I'm using a 1080 by 1080 composition at 30 frames per second. And then I have 4 clips laid out like this. So we all know that cubes have 6 sides, but if you can sort of cheat a little because you're probably not gonna slide 6 times. You can sort of like repeat layers and cheat a little. I mean, I'll show you if we get there, but I think I'll have this slide 3 times if I'm lucky. I might have left this a bit short, but we'll see. So I might have the slide like here, here, and here maybe. This is probably getting a bit ambitious, but we'll see. Okay, so what you want to do is you have your however many layers you're having. I'm just going to have 4 to start with, and then we're going to turn on motion blur, and then we're going to select all of these and do motion blur and 3D. And then we are going to go to the custom view 1, and we're going to start as if we were making a cube. So I'm going to use this top layer as my first sort of clip that we see, and then I'm going to rotate one of these whichever way I want my transition to go. So let's say we're going to turn to the right maybe, and we'll turn this over by 90 degrees, and then make sure you have snapping on if you have that available for your After Effects. Some versions don't have it. If you do, that's great. If you don't, good luck. And so we're going to have it go from this clip here to this clip here, and then I want it to sort of turn up, so there'll be like a clip on top. So I'll do that with this one here, and we're going to change the X position to 90 so it flips over, and then Z rotation to -90. So if you can sort of picture it in your head, it's like this clip, and then flip down onto this one, like that. And then we're going to need to add a null layer in the middle. So I'm not going to always keep these like this. This is just a sort of template, if you will. I mean, you'll see, because sometimes you can run into issues and then you have like clips going through and whatnot, and you just, yeah, it can get a little bit complicated, but we'll get there. So we need to change the Z position of this null layer so it's in the middle. So I'm going to go to the right and scroll out so that you can see like the whole outline of the square. And I think the divider here is pretty much centered, so that's lucky. So we can use that like that. And we can go to active camera, and you'll see that we're now on this clip. And if I go to rotation, pressing R, okay, actually before we do that, select all your layers and then parent them to the null layer like this. And you'll see if we go to X rotation, it'll like rotate like this as if we are inside the cube. And then we can basically just outline what we want to do with the rotation. So I wanted to go to the right, so I need to use Y rotation, because it's going to go like this, and then we're going to move up like that, but less messy. Start off with 0 and then have it at the beginning, and then I'm going to use these markers as sort of like little guide points of where we want the fastest part of each part of the transition to be. So by this point we want to be fully over 90 degrees, negative 90, like so. It'll be like this, and then from here we'll want to have, actually we can spread that out a bit, and then from X rotation we're gonna drag that to this keyframe, like that sort of beat, and then over here, because we want this bit here to be the fastest part of the transition, we're going to keep that in the middle, and we're going to go up like this to negative 90, and you can see it's sort of moving like we're inside the cube, but not by beats yet because we haven't done our graphs yet, but we can do that pretty easily. But before we get there, I'm just checking around because you can see that this bit here doesn't actually have a layer in it, but we need to add one in there. So I'm going to grab this spare clip that I had left over. I'm going to go to custom view 1 and I'm just going to fit it in there. If you want to move around this camera, press C and then you can move it around just by holding and clicking, and then press V to go back to your normal, I don't know, like the arrow tool, whatever you call it. And we're going to press R, and for this one, let's say it's going to rotate forward 90 degrees. It doesn't really matter because you're barely going to see it, but we just have to make sure there's something filled in that corner so that when we do rotate, it isn't going to look weird and like we haven't actually filled out our cube. So now you'll see that it is in this little, I'm pointing to the screen as if you can see. So now you can see it's in this little corner. And we have all the sides filled, but technically all sides are not filled, but the viewer doesn't know that. So like this bit here doesn't actually have a clip in it, but since you can't see it, you would never know. So we scroll around and then it'll go up like this, but you see that there's a problem here, that the clip we just added, the way we're going with our null layer, it will actually cover our next sort of slide that we want to have, and we don't want that. So basically what I like to do is, as soon as this clip is out of frame, which we don't know yet because I haven't done my graphs yet, you'll basically just like scroll this back so that it doesn't exist, and then when you do this, it's not there, so it's not blocking the way, and it still looks like you're inside the cube, which I think is pretty cool. So now we're going to go to the graph so I can do this properly and make sure I can trim this layer to where it needs to be. So we're going to do a keyframe assistant, and we're going to keep our time indicator on this keyframe, which is where the beat is supposedly meant to be, and we're going to make sure the steepest part is in the middle, like so. Just do like whatever you want at the moment, however steep or loose you want it to be. Generally just do this to sort of see where you're at, but that might be a little bit too harsh. So I'm going to pull this back and keeping my time indicator in the middle so I can see, and we'll see how this one looks. Cool. And we'll do the X rotation in a similar fashion, keeping the time indicator in the middle where the beat is, and we're going to go in like this, like that, and we'll see how that looks. Okay, it's a little harsh, I want it to go a little bit more relaxed, so I'm just going to pull these out slightly and soften this curve until I have something that I like, which is that. I could actually probably spread these out more, to be honest, because it's looking a little harsh. As always, this is entirely dependent on your own edit. Like whatever I'm doing now may not totally suit what you're doing, but you know, this is sort of just like a guide really, and then you can adjust it to however you need it to be. And as always, I'm super picky with everything that I do, so I will be adjusting this for eternity. Okay, that's looking better. I could actually probably add another one if I wanted to. Maybe we could do that. Okay, so we're gonna add another clip, and I'm gonna, since I've only used these 3 clips, I need to actually add this one there again. So it's basically, it disappears here into the corner, so we can drag this here the moment it's gone, we don't need it. And then from this point, I think I want to have it rotate like right again. So if we go back to custom view, and then we can duplicate this and then sort of drag it along and put it over here. And we want to sort of redo this, so I'm going to put this back at 0. And then we're going to change, the Z rotation. It can get a little bit confusing, but basically you just want to rotate the clip so that when you pan to it, it's going to be facing the right way. So I think the way we're going, this is going to be -90. And then we just drag it to where we want it to be, and it'll snap. And now we've still got a black square here, so I do need to drag it out a little bit to where this gap begins, which is around here. So it's technically the same clip that I've used twice, but you'd never really know. I mean, even if it does look similar, you can just like rotate it around and nobody would be none the wiser. So I can just do like +90 and it looks different now, so it's not purple in the corner anymore. We'll do this corner, 270. Then it looks a little bit different, and then nobody would ever really know that you'd use the same clip twice. So then we're going to figure out which one we need to use to rotate the way we want. So it's not X rotation, it's not Y rotation, it's not Z rotation, it's the N, oh no, there we go. I don't know, weird things happen when you do 3D, so it's not any of these 3, but it is this middle orientation. So we're just going to use that instead. So we can keyframe orientation around like this, and then we'll go, oop. And then again, you can see that, I think this clip, or is it this one? Oh, yeah, this one is in the way. So we'll trim that back when we need to, but for now I'm just going to hide it so I can see what I'm doing. And we're going to do it around like onto 270 so that the clip is centered. And then just like we did with the others before, we're using this marker here is our indicator for when the beat is going to be. And since I did use the orientation instead of like XYZ, I can only really use the speed graph for whatever reason, but I just need to make the speed graph equivalent of whatever the value graph was. I can look at them to see, which I mean it's basically the same. It doesn't really matter which graph you use, I don't think. So yeah, now we have this little inner 3D thing, but you can see since I've hidden that first layer, you can't actually see it here, so we're going to fix that now. So we'll unhide that layer so we can see it. It's going round, and it's disappeared, so I can, so like the moment it sort of goes out of the frame, like here, you can trim it back because we don't need it. All done, and then it looks normal, and then I'm actually going to repurpose that layer. So I'm going to duplicate it like I did before, drag it out, split it, hide it for a second, and then because now I have this gap here that I need to cover up, so I'm just going to scroll around to where it begins, which is about here, and then I'm going to go to custom view and I'm going to fill in that gap with this layer. So now it's over here, but I want it to be like on top, so I'm going to go to my rotation tool and we're going to flip this around to -90, and then X position will be +90, hold V and drag it to your desired location, which for me is the top, like so. And then when we go back to our active camera, now that gap has been filled in, and that is it. And then here's what it might look like with a coloring. Yeah, we're all done. All of the overlays and colorings that I used on the alternate versions of these example clips are available on my PayHip store if you're interested in checking them out. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!